This is a brief gameplay overview of the Limits of Glory's latest title, Jersey, New Jersey. In the game, there are two completely separate games. One campaign is based on the invasion of the island of Jersey by the French, and the other campaign is Washington's 10 days with the Trenton and Princeton campaign. So in this video, we're just going to look at the Jersey campaigns. There's two scenarios in the game. There's the 1779 attempted invasion by the French that was called off, and we go through the what ifs if they'd actually landed. And then there's the 1781 actual invasion by the French, and we try and recreate the situation that occurred. In both scenarios, the French start by sailing their flotillas from the Ile-de-Chaussee. My French is not great, so you have to excuse that. Towards the island, and then the French player needs to decide where they're going to land to start the invasion. The coloured arrows are the directions of the tide, and the tide does change throughout the game. The event clock will drive changes. You either have a high tide or a low tide, and this is marked on the map by the marker as the tides change. Depending on the direction of the tide, events can throw up drifting and surging, where the flotillas will be pushed around the island without the French player being able to do anything about it because of the tidal surges. So it's quite difficult to get onto the island in the first place, let alone trying to pick where to actually land and successfully do that. Then in the 1781, the actual invasion, the French landed. They managed to march to the capital at St. Helier. So this is represented on the map by this zone here, which goes to an expansion board. So this is the town. Everything in this space here is being represented on the town map. And Royal Square, the French need to get to Royal Square. The governor, Governor Corbett, was in his residence at the time. They managed to get him out of his residence. They brought him to Royal Square, and they got him to sign surrender documents with which they tried to persuade the garrison of Jersey to surrender. And all that is reflected in the game. Once the French manage to capture Governor Corbett, they can approach any British and Jersey militia formations, and depending on the events and what's going on, there's a chance that they can basically ask them to surrender, and there's a chance that they will, because the governor has already signed the island surrender, which was the case in the actual campaign. Some commanders didn't know whether to surrender or not. Some felt that they should. Some decided to fight. The main British commander on the island at the time was a chap called Pearson, and he decided to fight. And in the real campaign, the British troops on the island, along with some of the local Jersey militia, managed to get into the town, stormed Royal Square, and managed to free the governor and capture the French invasion forces. So that's what the players have to do in the game. The British player is going to need to muster troops from the parish churches. Jersey's split into 10 parishes. Actually, sorry, I think it's split into 12 parishes, and we're representing 6 of them. And in these, you can muster troops and you can muster artillery from the local militias of these areas. And then you can march towards town along with the barracks. There was 3 barracks. There was the hospital barracks, Le Hougue, and at Fort Conway there were some British regular troops, and these can all be brought into the town as well. So it's a bit of a race for the French to secure victory before the British can organise themselves and try and take it back. In the 1779 scenario, the French attempted to land. They sailed around the island. They came round to St. Juan's Bay, and they were looking to land in the bay here, but it was during the day, and they were seen going along the coast, and the militia was able to form at the beach and started firing artillery on them as they were approaching the beaches. So the French turned and decided better of it and sailed away. So in the 1779, we're looking at the taking over of the muster churches, capturing some of the main fortifications, Elizabeth Castle and St Albans Castle and Montil Guy. So if the French player can capture enough of these positions, then they can win. The game introduces a few new ideas that have not been seen in any other Limits of Glory titles. The militia can deploy harrows. The terrain is very similar to Normandy. There was a lot of very high hedges, like bocage type hedges, and the militia used farm equipment, particularly harrows, that they strapped across the lanes to block and to form barricades to impede the French movement. There's subversion in that the French player can request the surrender of some of the fortified castles, because communication was difficult and some of the isolated garrisons didn't know if they'd already lost or not. So there's the element of subversion. You can spike the guns. All the churches actually held the militia's artillery pieces in the churches. So that's where they were stored. So if the French can get to these churches before the militia can be rallied, then there's a potential to spike the artillery, which again will give them an advantage. And in the 1779, there's victory points for holding the various locations. And so by the end of the game, whoever's got the most victory points can win. Obviously, if the British can defeat the French army and kill or capture the French commander, that will be an instant win for them. And if the French can secure enough of the fortified locations, the castles and the churches, that'll be an instant win for them. So there's quite a few new little twists to the rules. There's lots of sea spaces that you might get pushed into by drifting. There's zero spaces that are difficult to get out of. The French flotilla commanders have two different commanders for the two different operations. There was John Paul Jones in 1781 and Chamberand, who was the flotilla commander in 1779. Their glory can be used to try and get you out of these spaces, but they've only got a limited amount and it's still quite difficult to do. There's the alarm. The Jersey militia need to trigger the alarm before they can start to react. And so as the French approach and as they land, there's a potential for an alarm to go off. If the alarm doesn't trigger, then the Jersey militia won't start to muster. And so there is a chance that the French can land and get to town before the alarm is raised. Again, which is what happened in the 1781 invasion. They invaded in the night, and by the early hours of the morning, they had captured the governor and was in control of the town before anybody really knew what was happening. The game is a Limits of Glory game, so we've got the same type of combat system that we see in the other games. The French forces were a private army. They weren't troops of the king. They were the Nassau Legion, which was a sort of a private army under the Duke of Luxembourg. But there's the potential that if they start doing well, they can send back to France for French troops, for King's troops, so they can get better troops coming in as reinforcements as long as they can achieve certain conditions to grant those. The British, in 1779, they only have a small garrison of regulars on the island and really going to depend on their militia. In 1781, they kind of realised that the island was at risk. The garrison is much bigger in 1781, so there's more regulars then, but still the militia is absolutely crucial. The events, there's again two different sets of events for the two different scenarios. So the base table is the same, and then for the 1779, the second events are different to the second events for the 1781. So the two scenarios will give you really quite different games, different events occurring, really quite different feels to them. And down the bottom here it tells you when some of the events will provide new fleets, new French fleets or flotillas with more reinforcements coming. And it's just an aid there to tell you what troops would be on there. So this is the game. It's the 6th and 7th campaigns in the Limits of Glory series. Hopefully you're going to find it very interesting. It's certainly different again. Peregrine Nichols has designed this. He comes from Jersey, grew up on the island of Jersey, knows a lot of these places intimately well, and he's done a lot of research into the background of what happened with the help of the local historic societies in Jersey. So it's been great fun developing and designing this game. Peregrine has really put a lot of effort into it, and I think it shows through. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks for listening.